Hey, Bulls and Bears, we're back with another dose of economic reality. And as usual, we've got a lot of huge financial economic news to get into today. But I want to start this video off with something that happened to me yesterday. I actually took a few hours off of work and went in to buy a car. I was ready to buy a vehicle yesterday. And for those of you that watch this channel, you know that I've been watching vehicle prices. And with the credit crunch now coming into play, I expect prices to fall, but I was just tired of shopping for cars, right? So I was going to pull the trigger. I was going to buy this vehicle that I saw online. It was a Honda Pilot, a couple years old, 2020 model, well, 3 years old now. Um, and we like Honda Pilots and we like Toyota Highlanders. I've got a family, so we like the third row. Long story. Anyways, went into this dealership. The price online looked great. I was ready to test drive it and go ahead and buy it and, get financed. I know interest rates are pretty high. I was going to have a pretty good down payment, so I didn't really care about the interest rate. I go in there, and the salesman basically tells me, oh, by the way, this has these added features. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good price considering it has all these features. Well, no, those weren't included in the price. So not just tax, title, and license got tacked on to the advertised price. There were these features that weren't included in the listing price. Namely, it was a theft recovery system. I'm like, okay, if it's installed in the vehicle, just include that in the price. So they did a bait and switch. I don't know what you'd call it, but false advertising. The other thing that was in there that they didn't include, that they listed as an extra, was scratch resistant coating on the paint. So that's what car dealerships are doing. You would think with the way vehicles have been in such high demand and the way prices have been, skyrocketing over the past couple years, that dealers would be selling vehicles so fast, with this so-called shortage that are still seeing a shortage. There's actually not as many cars for sale as there used to be on the dealer lots that I've been watching. Now, maybe in your neck of the woods it's different, but here in my area of San Diego, I'm seeing car lots definitely not as full as they were just a couple years ago, especially pre health crisis. Right, so that's the kind of thing that's going on. I ended up walking away from the dealer. The salesman was like, "No, come back, come back, come back. I'll work with you." I'm like, "Oh, I don't even want to work with somebody who's got like these tricky price schemes. I don't know what you'd call it, but basically hidden fees. I could see tax, title, license. Of course, that's not included in the advertised price. But to say, oh, there's these features that we didn't include in the price, that's ridiculous. Okay, take the features out. Take off the paint coating or the paint protection. Take out the theft recovery system and give me the price that's advertised. Of course, tax, title, and license would be above that. So anyways, they tried to trick me. And I feel sorry for people that came in from out of town to maybe buy a car that they saw was a good price. So be careful if you're looking to buy a vehicle. You look online, sometimes you'll see them cheaper in the next county or 100 miles away, and sometimes it's worth the trip. You can save $1,000 by driving 100 miles. You might spend $50, $60 in gas, but it's worth it if you're going to save $1,000. But watch out for these dealers. This was actually a franchise dealer too. I don't want to say the name of it. I don't want to bash a dealer. It was a franchise dealer. It wasn't Bob's Car Lot. This was a franchise dealer from a major automobile make or manufacturer. So bottom line, be careful out there. There's trying shady stuff, as far as I can see. But let's get into some news here. We've got the beginnings of this credit crunch. So maybe what happened to me at the dealership was maybe it was a sign. Maybe it was meant to be that I didn't buy a vehicle right now because maybe we're going to see some pretty big corrections coming down in the next few months. And we see the credit crunch is emerging. We see banks still facing heavy losses. Let's talk about one of those banks. And they lost a big portion of their deposits, and thus they're laying off people. And we're yet to see the full outcome of these bank runs. But here's another recent story that tells us that this is not over. The banking crisis is not over. The bank runs are not over. Let's take a look at this. First Republic Bank to cut staff after a 40% plunge in deposits. Out of Investopedia here. Troubled regional lender First Republic Bank announced that it will cut about a quarter of its staff. That's 25% of its staff. to reduce expenses after deposits plunged by 40% in the first quarter of 2023. Now, the first quarter of 2023, remember the bank failures and the runs didn't really ramp up until March. It was into the month of March. So, just a part of the month, March, which was the last month of the first quarter, saw a 40% plunge in the deposits at this bank. And now they're laying off 25% of their staff. So I think this is just the beginning, folks. We're already seeing layoffs this year up to this point, March, April. So by this time in 2022, late April, compared to this time, late April 2023, we're 5 times more now than we were at this point last year. And things are just kicking off. The bank runs haven't stopped. We see what happened here with First Republic. How many other banks are going to be making similar announcements here in the coming months? I think we're going to see many more similar stories to this and many more bank failures. Actually, if you look at the banks, all the banks are insolvent, depending on how you look at it. If you look at solvency as having the money that you loaned out, all the banks are insolvent. They all engage in this fractional lending system where you only have to have a penny to loan out millions of dollars, literally, because there's no limit now to how much they can loan out. But they're shooting themselves in the foot now because we see that the regional, the smaller banks are not guaranteed to be propped up. They don't have the guaranteed backing like the big 5 or 6 mega banks do. Maybe they thought they would, but what's happened here over the past few months is a clear sign that smaller and regional banks may not be rescued and the depositors at these banks may not be backed. And that's why you see one of the reasons why you see these big outflows. Now, I think a lot of it is people are draining their accounts to pay bills because even before the banking crisis, we saw that the savings rate was dropping pretty quickly. And we're actually at about a 40-year low. But we've been seeing this declining savings rate for a while, thus declining deposits. And that's just one of the things on top of the higher interest rates and people pulling their money out of the banks because they don't trust the banks. You know, it's a storm of things happening right now. And a lot more people are worried about layoffs. And it's not just me, the lonely voice out there anymore. Most people now are worried about this. Here's a recent article, Kiplinger, most Americans are worried about layoffs, according to a recent survey. With what feels like daily reports of layoffs, more Americans have concerns. And I've said, pretty much every day there's new layoffs and usually pretty big ones. If you feel like there are reports of layoffs every day, you're apparently not alone. A vast majority of Americans are worried about losses across the U.S. in their own industries, according to a recent study. A whopping 75% of Americans said they're concerned about widespread job losses. In a Morning Consult report released Thursday, nearly half of these respondents said that they're concerned about job losses in their own industry, while 44% they were concerned, 44% said they were concerned about job losses at their own company. So a lot of people, 75%, are worried about just job losses in general because they know how that impacts the economy. But see, that snowballs. Job losses at a company that you don't work at ultimately is going to come back to hurt your business because the more people losing their jobs, the less business your company is going to get, and the increasing the likelihood that your company is going to have to lay off people. So this snowball, I think, is just starting to roll down the hill. I know we've been talking about a financial collapse for a while. Well, it should have collapsed in 2020. We saw record amounts of money printing. Could they do the same thing? QE to infinity, 2.0, 5.0, whatever round we're on, I lose track. Could they do that? Absolutely. Could they reverse and cut rates? Absolutely. Is that going to fix things? No, it's just going to make inflation worse. So now we have this nagging inflation that hasn't went away. It hasn't diminished, very much. It's still up big time over last year and especially 2 years ago. So cutting rates now, QE to infinity, is only going to add fuel to this rising cost of living fire. And what worked in the past may appear to work temporarily, but it's only going to make things worse in the end. So could they attempt to kick this can further? Absolutely, but look where the can kicking has gotten us so far. A lot of people in financial peril. Look at the levels of debt right now. Look at the number of people that are behind on their rent, and look at things like this. 75% of people worried about layoffs, but apparently everything's fine, and I'm just a doom and gloomer out here. So, please let me know what you think about this down in comments. But let's get into some other news here. Here's something else that's going to add more fuel to the fire. Layoffs loom in U.S. manufacturing as backlogs shrink. The U.S. manufacturers have now mostly worked their way through their backlogged orders. So we still had backlogs here in the manufacturing sector for years, ever since the slowdown or the shutdowns and the lockdowns. And that means job cuts are on the horizon very soon. These orders, which accumulated because of supply chain disruptions in the early days of the health crisis, helped keep the manufacturing industry mostly insulated from mass layoffs seen in other sectors like technology and finance. So now manufacturing layoffs are going to start kicking in here. And you have this credit crunch. You have people, so many people maxed out on debt, high interest rates. Even people that have money, a lot of them are sitting on the sidelines. They're not like me shopping for cars, which is probably not a good time to shop for cars. So probably lucky that the dealer was shady. But we've got all these things coming together, folks, and it's going to be a very interesting year. Now, it's real interesting. A lot of the business news channels, Fox, CNBC, and others. I click through them every once in a while. I don't really watch a lot of them unless somebody's on there, like maybe Peter Schiff or something like that, because I know that he's going to give a counter narrative to a lot of what these talk show hosts or business news show hosts are saying. I'll watch it in cases like that, but really I don't watch it that much. But when I do glance at it or flip through it and watch it for a few minutes, I see, oh, let's talk about what stock to buy, what stock looks good, what companies to buy. I mean, people think that the stock market isn't in trouble, but we still haven't surpassed the peak that we saw. Just going to pull up a quick chart here, the S&P 500. S&P 500, we peaked in late 2021, early 2022, and here now more than a year and 4 months later, we still haven't surpassed that peak. In fact, the peak was about 47.58 in the S&P 500. We're down around 41.48, so we're still well off the highs here. And I think it's for a reason, because things are crumbling and things are only going to get worse. Everybody, so fasten your seatbelts and please come back to this channel. Stay on top of the news. We'll get through this together. We're going to stay ahead of the curve. We're going to come out just fine on the other side and likely profit from this. Have cash in case of falling prices, and vehicle prices I'm hoping will fall. I know one dealer I'm not going to go back to. Home prices, if you're a cash buyer for homes, you're going to be seeing some nice deals. If you have to finance, probably not, because mortgage rates are going to make up for any drop in price in most areas, not all areas, but most areas. Have some metals and some real assets there. That way, if we see this inflation storm get worse, you're going to have some assets that will inflate, unlike these fiat dollars. So you got to have dollars in case of deflation. You've got to have non-dollar assets in case of inflation, right? I don't know what these bankers are going to do. I don't know what decisions they're going to make. That's why I try to play both sides, be ready for both cases. If you know exactly what's going to happen and which way to go, please let us know down in the comments so we can all learn from your expertise. Thanks everybody for watching. Keep stacking big. Love. Bye for now.